Hi everybody, it's Travis, the Pagan Scholar, here with a book review of Wicca's Charm by Catherine Edwards Sanders. If you have watched my videos before, you usually pick up on the fact that I give generally positive reviews. I like to try to find the good in something, even if I disagree with it. I'm just gonna start reviewing it. Okay, this is Christian Apologetics. I disagree with this book on an intellectual level, not a spiritual level. People in Christianity are permitted to maintain that their beliefs are valid. Absolutely. Totally. Good job. This book was written in the early 2000s. I'm so sorry, this is terrible. 2005. She received a grant to travel across America and interview Wiccans and contemporary pagans, and this is the product of her work. This comes from a very Christian perspective, and while that in and of itself is fine, it is not investigative reporting. This is, here's a bunch of reasons why people are leaving and they're wrong, so this is how we can bring them back into the Christian church. I believe this book uses a lot of logical fallacies, but it's the pathos, it's the ethos, it's the tone, the way that she presents her rhetoric that is so just disgusting to me. In one of the first chapters, Fueling the Extremes, she's talking about a group of people doing a ritual and they are accosted by Christians, and then she defends the Christians. Quote, "They had set up their ceremony in an empty parking lot, and events were underway when a group of no doubt well-intentioned Christians came and surrounded them with their cars. One blasted loud Christian rock music out of his SUV stereo and called on the Wiccans to repent. As a Christian, I read this and sighed. The very fact that the Christians were driving gas-guzzling, earth-unfriendly SUVs would have been the first turnoff to these earth-worshipping people. And it's simply rude to blare loud rock music at anyone early in the morning, no matter what the lyrics." Really? Okay, that's, yeah, loud music. That's the thing that was, you know, so abrasive and ignorant of these people to do to another person's spiritual beliefs. We're gonna move on. In another section of the book, does God really love women? Which I can only deduct from her, writings, probably not. What kind of God would want women to have autonomy? So in the subchapter, what value does paganism offer? One, she states, according to paganism, human beings have the same value as rocks, trees, or animals. Pretty sure that's not, correct. I think I'm a bit more important than a crystal. And I'm pretty sure other pagans would agree they are a bit more important than a rock. I mean, it's just... When British missionary William Carey went to India in the late 18th century, he lived among goddess-worshipping cultures in which widow burning was prevalent. When a woman's husband died, the widow would plunge to her death into a blazing funeral pyre of her husband. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but the fuck does this have anything to do with contemporary paganism in America? One, widow burning has been outlawed because of William Carey the missionary, yes, in the fucking 18th century. This has no bearing on our contemporary society at all. Why are you even bringing this up? Because it is something outrageous for her Christian readers to gasp at, to say, oh my God, that's what those pagans are doing. We have to save their souls, don't we? Just... Moving on to how to save our souls. She did talk to a lot of different people, a lot of different pagans, so good for her for not focusing all of her research on just one interview. So she's gone to this festival and she's talking with these people and they bring up Jesus. Quote, "And if Jesus were here, he would most likely sit among us and at least listen to us," end quote. Quote continuing for the actual chapter. She laughed cheerily. Period. Jesus. Period. "She and Donna had brought him up without my even asking about him. No one had a bad word to say about him during my research. Period. Ever. Period. Talking about Jesus is always a great conversation starter with neo-pagans." Okay, I'm sorry. The stylistic writing of single-word sentences does not belong in investigative reporting. That belongs in novels. Stop. But, oh yeah, and if you want to talk to them kooky neo-pagans, bring up Jesus. Don't patronize me. Don't speak down to me. Like, yeah, I'm going to talk about Jesus because he's a historical figure, and you're probably not following his teachings. I'm probably a better Christian than you. So, let's move on. She continues her, like, pedantic douchebaggery by continuing to say, when I tell Christians about Wicca's view of Satan, I'm almost always met with a confused reaction. Well, they don't understand because you're portraying it in a way that is spiritually and intellectually backwards. I can tell what they're thinking. Of course they worship Satan. If they're worshiping a supernatural being other than Christ, they are worshiping Satan. One person argued with me for a good 10 minutes about this. She never got the point I was trying to make. Wiccans are, as a rule, not consciously or deliberately worshiping Satan. It gets better. Whether they are unconsciously worshiping him is an issue on which Wiccans will differ with Christians. So it's like, fuck you and your God. I don't care if he is this, spiritual thing that takes you to a place of grace. No, I'm a Christian and I know better. It's Satan. This is like the tone of the book. Continuing on, and there's this doom overhanging her because she talks about feminism and she talks about environmental issues, and she knows that it's a growing trend. Like, this is not a pagan trend. This is like, feminism is a thing and you can't really stop it. People are going to wake up and realize that, maybe we shouldn't treat women like shit. Maybe we should, pay attention to the environment. This is not a purely Wiccan or pagan situation. But because it is so prevalent amongst pagans, this is like her straw man to attack. I'm sorry. This is just, it gets out of hand a lot. I'm trying so hard to... No, I'm not trying hard. I'm having a blast. This is fantastic. Okay, this next part, I have to admit, I am not a Celtic scholar. Any of you pagans out there that study the Celtic mythos, the idea of that part of the world and that time, please, dig into this. So when she's talking about Celtic Christianity, she's saying that that was more successful than Roman Catholicism because Celtic, she doesn't ever call it Catholicism, she calls it Celtic Christianity, retained its positive pagan attributes, working with the land and things like that. But then she just blanket statements the fuck out of everything. The Irish Celts worshipped nature and pagan gods and goddesses, but when Patrick told them about a greater spirit whom he worshipped, they listened, and many liked what they heard. Ireland was a largely illiterate society at the time. The Druids, the traditional religious leaders of the Irish Celts, were learned but had closely guarded their knowledge as a way to enhance their status in society. Christianity appealed to the pagan Celts because it was open to all. Leaders kept no secrets from the people. As Christ has demonstrated, everyone was welcome. Okay, I'm not a scholar on the literacy rates of pagan Ireland and Scotland and the Picts, and it's such a huge, gigantic thing that you can't just say Celtic, but essentializing is bad, everybody. Don't do it. This is just where the fuck are your citations, woman? There are no citations, actually. Yeah, that's fun. So she has a glossary. She has further resources, academic resources. She has drawn from Helen Berger with the census. She has drawn from a couple of other things, but she doesn't say where they are in her writing. She just says, oh, and this is what I've talked about. Then straight up Christian apologetics, Christian commentary on culture, Christian stewardship of creation, holistic Christian living. No academic validity to this work. I'm sorry, this is... Okay, moving on, moving forward. So she's talking about the political awareness, the political activity that many pagans engage in, at least in her studies. So she's talking about all the different protesters at this rally, and you've got pagans protesting for environmentalism, but you've also got political protesters. Quote, "We need communism," yelled another young woman as she held a banner featuring a silhouetted man raising a gun aloft in front of the red star of communism. I walked over to her and asked what kind of communism she hoped to bring to New York. "Any kind," she thundered. Do you mean the communism of Stalin or Mao? I asked. Yes, that would be great. That is what we need, she shouted back at me. Somewhat startled by this, I asked, do you know much about their policies and what they did to their people? She looked at me and blinked. She was quiet for a minute, but then resumed her chant for communism to be established in America. A reporter from the Associated Press sidled up next to me and asked, was she really advocating the policies of Stalin? When I nodded, he exclaimed, oh, to be 19. He chuckled and walked away. Sure, let's lump all the pagans into a political party I'm sorry, this is misrepresentation. This is terrible. And the people reading this book do not know that political parties and paganism are like two completely separate beasts. Pagans are not communists. Are there communist pagans? Absolutely, sure. But are all pagans communist? No. They're not going to get that. They're going to read about a woman who is incidentally at a pagan rally, and they're going to assume she is pagan, and that this woman, this 19-year-old, is advocating Stalin's communism, and they're going to think all pagans are communist. So this is bad. This is really bad. Throughout the book, she does do that like compliment sandwich. Compliment, no, compliment. And so she is saying like, oh, Wiccans and neo-pagans are actually ahead of ourselves a lot, and they're very progressive, and we should be politically active, and all of these things. But bless their hearts. Like, I'm sorry, this is just bad writing. This does not stand up to intellectual integrity. This does not stand up to spiritual integrity. Like, this is just backhanded compliments and then saying, but you should really come back to Jesus. So, stop! And okay, anyways, regardless, she does do a good job of summing up the history of the development of Wicca and the rise of contemporary paganism. She does kind of slap Aleister Crowley in there, just in the middle of it, just for that, again, that shock factor, that trauma to her Christian readers to clutch the pearls and say we need to convert the heathens. But, like, just all in all, this book is trash. I'm sorry. Like, it makes me ill to read this book. Don't suggest this to your Christian friends if they want to understand Wicca. If they want to understand contemporary paganism or Wicca, take them to a circle. That is the best way for a Christian to understand contemporary paganism, is to engage with it, to experience it from a place of love. As I am sure, as pagans, we will listen and give them a shot to talk to us. We or at least I'm sorry, love engaging in a dialogue. I love, expressing the exchange of ideas. It's wonderful things. But when the ideas are such pig-headed bullshit like this, don't listen. You don't have to have that in your psyche. You don't have to have that in your house. So don't buy this book. As always, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again, unless you're Catherine Sanders.